Hello. Hello. Banner. Hit my eye.
And should I get Forsaken?
It's up to you, man. It's a fun game.
I like how much playtime you get out of it.
Nothing unlocks until Shadowkeep though, because I got Forsaken and everything so far.
Well, not everything.
Well, no, like the end game.
Well, the end game is
The moon.
the last
The moon is
extension. The what?
I can't do anything on it.
No, because the moon is Shadowkeep.
I thought the moon was Forsaken.
No, the Tangled Shore is Forsaken. Which this is technically for a different podcast and a different
So what's better, Shadowkeep or Forsaken?
Cade. I gotta say it's Forsaken. Because the Cade. The Cade storyline is just.
Hey, I know you're hungry. Mom,
What's up, Asher?
he's
Huh?
hungry.
Does that uncle smell funny?
No.
What? I'm trying to figure out if she wants me to give him now. Oh, she turned away.
Hang on.
Okay, now I think.
Joseph.
Okay.
Cameron's you the football?
All right, ladies, you can get up and make your plates now.
Well, she gave me 3 ounces of breast milk, and I gave him that like an hour ago, so I know that's not enough. But I didn't think he was taking it.
Talking
I
to
guess if that's what
We
they
got going
put
on
in there. I guess if that's what they should
No, I'm a
put
little
in
more on
there.
fire than normal. It happens.
Are you trying to get him to spoon with you?
No, he's already spooning with a spoon.
I want to eat. That's not doing
I'm afraid of how you're standing, my friend. I'm not good at holding you when you're doing awkward things with your body.
Yeah.
Get some food in. I don't
And
think
I'm
it's all bad.
glad he was able to do this. He's quite finicky.
You working at children's church or staying here?
Stay here.
You think so? He really does look like a weird mix between the two of them. Like hardcore. Yeah, Daddy has another baby, but that's okay. Because you have Uncle News.
Is he jealous?
He's just watching.
This is my nephew.
Effing you.
His name's Asher. Say hello, world. My name's Asher, and I have a last name, Bolt. Asher Bolt.
I have a last name.
Took me a second there.
No,
I was gonna
Katie's
say
probably
Bledsoe, and I was
watching
like,
this
wait,
and is like,
that's
"That's not
Katie's
right."
last name. That's not
That's not Katie's last name anymore.
Well, yeah, it's not Katie's last name anymore.
used to be.
Avery's last name used to be Roxanne. Roxanne, too.
Roxanne.
That's a spoon in my eye, dude.
Your nickname?
You keep the spoon.
Go for it. Okay, so now she tells me that they usually mix the breast milk with the formula, and she don't know if he'll take the formula. Where'd he go?
Oh, no. I was gonna take it back in a second.
Are you spooning
Okay.
my nose, man? I do not need a spoon in my nose. You dropped your spoon. I caught it because it's awesome.
It takes him a minute, but eventually he'll figure out how to pick up the thing that he dropped.
Yeah, I know. I got lots of facial hair that Daddy doesn't have anymore.
Yeah, the day he shaved, Ryan told me he wasn't a dad anymore, now he's a mom.
Pretty much.
He's a chunkster.
He needs a football.
We got a good chicken. That was on camera.
Alright, just give me the green.
Well, when does it start eating meat and stuff? That's
He can try meat now.
This chicken, I don't know if I can cook it. Yeah. The chicken, is the chicken
Where did he go?
I don't know.
What about tortilla?
He probably rolled somewhere. I'll find it when I'm sleeping later.
Wait, it is.
I'll find it when I'm sleeping. Wait.
Is
Try
it,
this?
is it from the quesadilla?
You go with that?
No, it's got butter on it.
Too late. I'll put it.
Gary.
Too late. I'll put it in my mouth.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Because you can have some, it'll be fine, because you can have butter. He can have candy. Can we take it? We did.
I forgot. He didn't have dairy now. You can have pretty much anything as long as it's not going to choke him.
Sugary.
He had that
Or choke.
No sugar.
And nothing further, because his teeth aren't fully developed, so nothing that's going to poke his gums.
Yeah.
So Matt rules.
Sure.
Low sodium, nothing crunchy,
No spices.
no spices, because no gallbladder.
So first off, or rather 5 minutes in now, it is International Pray for the Persecuted Church Day.
Easiest way.
And there's these 10 suggested. You can try to screenshot that, or you can go to icommittopray.com, find out all about it.
No, when you see him, don't tell him.
So you guys go ahead and get one of these before you leave. It's got a picture of this in the front, and in the back it's got 10 ways to pray for the persecuted church.
Huh. We were talking about that in church this morning.
Yeah, it's the International Day of Pray for the Persecuted Church. All right, gentlemen, we can get up and make our plates now.
He didn't specify that that's what it was. He just talked. Oh, I know
It's a
what
big
it was.
push from the voice of the martyrs.
Well,
I like that.
we were talking about James, but he tied it into
I'm not worried about it.
churches being persecuted.
My stomach still probably shouldn't eat.
And there's this really good video out there about a pastor from China that got assassinated in North Korea. That was just a little too graphic for me to feel comfortable posting on our social media accounts because I don't want the church's social media accounts to get shut down.
Whoa, no, that's too active. No, because I can't hold you. I can't help what you feel. I'm sorry.
But I highly recommend everyone go try to find the video about the.
Yeah. Okay, who's moving this? Is it me?
Pastor from China, and it's not posted. I mean, you have to go search for it. It's not like it's on a social media somewhere. Okay, and I got the chat client up. So if you're watching live with us right now and you want to say something to us, you can type it in, hit enter, it'll show up here, and I can reply. All of the services, but some of them.
Yeah, the one in the main doesn't. Big international.
I don't know if I put it on there.
Very reassuring. Name the companies.
FC2 Live, YouTube, Facebook.
Are those
Was I the only one that heard you saying that the families will get their food?
I guess so.
Whenever she's bigger, it unsnaps and gets longer.
I got a baby.
I guess there's a button here I could
I
hit.
guess Joseph is
YouTube, Periscope.
That one.
Periscope?
That one doesn't work with Restream.
No, it's read only.
You gotta kind of like stretch on
But you're always hungry.
My friend's getting a lot of stuff on that one, and
So is my personal Facebook account.
he gets really upset that
No, I'm good.
My personal Facebook account is also read only.
She can't help
Dude,
it.
Yeah.
ever since I put this bracelet on, I think I'm gonna take it off.
Go for it.
Take it off?
No, home.
No, I said I think
Oh,
I'm gonna
that's
take
it.
it off. I've
Oh,
been
that's
grumpy.
it. Oh.
People have been getting on my nerve. I cuss more with this bracelet on than I did in the last week. It's just embarrassing.
That's real life.
I think you're just more aware.
Really?
I don't think anything changed. I think you're just more aware of what.
it is. I struggle with it a lot. There are times where I'm like, oh, wait, I'm live somewhere. You know,
Are you
like-
serious?
Yeah.
oh yeah. It's, when you start thinking about it is when you actually start noticing how much you do.
It just makes her
Because I do it all the time when I'm live at events and stuff, and I'll do things, and then I'll be like, oh,
When you're playing Destiny?
when I'm playing anything, anytime I'm streaming
He likes to do that.
or podcast.
Congratulations, Jenny. You're a human. In case you didn't know.
You know
I
what?
told
It's
her, has
funny.
he done that to
It's
you?
not really funny,
Because when
but
you get seen, you're not gonna like that.
I've realized this. Like when you're reading or you're like doing a crossword or you're looking at Cosmo magazine or something, like, you'll just be like reading and just like so energetic and like so awake, and then you get out the scripture or something like that to say, and you're like,
It's because in the
I mean, like asleep, like
in the realm that
if
we're
it was
in.
Cosmo, I'd be like,
Oh yeah. In the realm that we're in our physical fallen bodies, we don't want to feed the good side. We want to feed the other. So it's easier to. What?
right.
What?
No, it's he's heavy.
He is a big boy.
Where are you trying to go? Aunt Tina is not done eating yet. Then you can go to Aunt Tina when she's done eating.
Yeah, when you start watching watching what you say, you notice you start saying a lot of things that make you embarrassed that you're saying them. But they were already being said. You weren't thinking about it, you know.
Yeah.
Are we doing?
The fact that you're making me touch your feet upsets me
Do
slightly.
you think that the enemy comes after you, like if you start, like I'm gonna start my day with prayer and with like meditation, and then you go about your day and it's like, man, I just feel like I'm running against the wind. Like the wind is blowing really, really hard and you're trying to walk. But if I start my day with like Jason Aldean and like drinking coffee and watching TV, watching my DVR.
Then you're right where the enemy wants you, right? There's no reason for the enemy to resist you if
It's okay.
you're where he wants you to be in that worldly stuff. But then when you try to be in the godly stuff, the world goes, whoa, put the brakes on.
But God allows the enemy to come again. God's like, okay, go after her.
Well, I mean,
Or like go after her. Like tempt her.
You want me to give her to him
Like
first?
make it. It's just like it's harder.
I don't think God micromanages quite like that as much.
But He allows you to be tempted. He
Right.
allows you
I mean-
to be tested.
Test it, sure.
I know. That baby's crying, isn't she?
He's like looking around to see who else is around.
Hey, he didn't immediately start screaming. He like
The musical babies.
Everything about that musical babies.
Those other panels you might enjoy seeing. Wild stuff. It's funny. They're taking a ton of stuff from Destiny, a ton of stuff from Final Fantasy 14. Just elements that to fit stuff. Like for example.
He thinks he's big.
Well, I guess he is big compared to the other ones.
That's
Although I don't
when
think
he
he
said
weighs
it's
much
more-
more than Asher does.
No, they're almost
He's more, he moves more.
Oh, really?
Asher's kind of white.
Asher's quite chunky.
Is that one?
This is Asher.
That's Asher.
He's bigger, right?
Even he was like,
I think he's pretty chunky.
I mean, that makes sense.
Chunky
but-
Connie, do you have like a birth cloth for it?
Why do I have the song stuck in my head?
I was singing it when we went
That's
to
what I want.
This is nacho night.
That's why. Okay. It just keeps going. Here's another one.
I'm gonna finish the story.
Yeah, he can go with that for a little bit.
Get my goblins set back up.
We played musical babies.
You played musical babies? We got a new baby. Hello, different baby.
It's still me.
Is he?
I'd be like, who's
I'll have to like put one in each arm and see.
because it's back?
Are you kidding me too?
I'll just roll with it.
I'll just
I-
roll with it.
Go and eat it.
Where'd your spoon go, buddy?
He dropped it.
Oh, here's one.
Like, well, it comes from bigger stuff. Actually, I don't know about that.
Right, it's a little bigger than Bill. He's like kind of taller and broader. But they're
Has everyone gotten the
belly
plate?
wise.
Yes,
Might still
everyone's
got a
got
little more.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for checking. I was the
But I
last
can walk through doorways straight.
Does that hurt, Brian?
Yeah, just turn sideways to walk through doorways.
He's got the arms and his shoulders are huge.
It's not just, he's a big dude. Like, his frame is big. I got told I was scary. I'm not scary.
What'd you do?
You went to the girls' fundraiser at school. You were wearing your beanie because it was cold, and he had his leather jacket on.
Did you
and
throw
his
another
jeans.
fun?
He didn't even have any of his rings on, and our friend Sweetie, she was like, You know, if I didn't know you, I'd be afraid of you.
I'm afraid sitting next to you. I'm like, why?
That's weird. Ow, 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 that's my hair.
I'm like, I'm substantially bigger than you, but not
Savannah
regular.
danced.
Okay, here, I gotta go where? Who wants the baby?
She's really, oh, the big boy.
I'm not even gonna come in, take him sneak me.
I haven't got the whole of that.
You want to go to Mama or you want to go to Mimi?
Oh, you want the baby?
Take it.
Can't help you there.
Specifically, I want that baby.
Do you
I've
want
never had
me?
Jesse cry so much.
Do you want me? Or do you eating?
Yeah, it's fine.
What number?
Put up my lap.
But it really like plastic.
He said, yeah, that's your beard too, isn't it?
Okay, we're good.
Water when you get a chance?
A water?
Yeah, I like a water as well.
Can I get a Dr. Pepper?
Water, Dr. Pepper. I think this may or may not be a Dr. Pepper.
Thank you.
Connie, you're good?
Yeah.
You good?
Hi, Pumpkin.
I've never seen her that baby cry.
I just said the same thing. I've heard her like call out once.
Well,
and that
she
was it.
spit up on me and then she started crying, so I don't know if maybe her tummy's hurt.
Oh. I misheard Jenny. I thought she was asking if she could take the bracelet because I have them out. But she wasn't saying that. She was saying she already had it and was thinking about taking it off.
It was burning her
I'm like,
arm.
no, you're just more aware, girl. It's
She
like, no.
reminds me of Rachel.
I haven't seen Rachel in a long time.
You want this?
Well,
Do you want to
they
finish
constantly have
it?
this, especially now. I went to an interview. It's my first interview since I've updated my LinkedIn. And I was constantly aware that my LinkedIn now states much more than you. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
Because now it says you're a pastor.
yeah. So I'm like, oh crap, I gotta be a nice person. Because you can't cause people to stumble. Which my aunt asked me. She
Hey,
goes,
hey,
"She'll take your
finish
LinkedIn."
it up. Don't get distracted.
What church you're working with? Yeah, I thought you might ask about that if you haven't checked my LinkedIn. Well, I got an update. You sent the update to everybody. Yeah, did that on
Tell
purpose.
her, hey, Bri, is she not wanting to nurse?
No, she was. She just was got so mad that she was
So let that
I was
conversation
saying, if
go.
she's not wanting to nurse, it might be better to let him hold her so that she doesn't smell it and get,
Very political person, so it's hard sometimes to know.
Yeah, I think it's that way. He'll get mad at me and want to nurse, but it's not time to eat. He ate 30 minutes ago. But if I'm holding him, he wants to nurse, so I just have to give him somebody
Today
else.
we're doing here now. It's been changed.
He also does this thing where if he really wants to nurse,
Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
he'll tell me by doing this.
You okay, dude? Can I get a fist
Arms
bump?
go sideways.
Throw himself in a position where he can't possibly eat from.
Look what you decided to come down.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
I can't do anything about it right now.
Last
Don't
time
mess
travel.
with it. We'll put stuff on it when we get home.
So
Have I had her have anything with me?
I've heard a bunch about it, but I can't remember if I ever met her.
She wasn't at the wedding, was she?
Yes,
She
she was.
was, yeah.
Yes, she was. You've met her, but it's been a while. And this year she turned 76.
Yeah, she'll be 76.
76?
We were there last year for her 75th.
So this is her last year traveling, so everyone's gonna come out for Christmas. So we have a family because Chelsea's not traveling anymore. So I can find out, Chelsea with Ethan, their cost every 3 months.
Doesn't she have to travel out of state every couple months and stay in a hotel and all that stuff?
Their 3-month expenditure for his food, his special food and all the travel they have to do. His 3-month cost is $2,500
Every time.
every 3 months. So just for him,
Just for like 3 days
just
or 2 days?
food, the doctor
Between
bills,
2 and
that's not
4.
clothes and the fact that he's in a
Yeah.
private school and all that. Just traveling and the food is basically
Where's Bubba?
$10,000 a year for just his food.
Bubba?
Is that Papa?
Hi.
Can't untie my shoes, they're zippers. And it's just-
Hi, Bubba. Yeah.
And he has every 3 months he has to go get scopes done.
Why can't they do that locally?
There's, his pain is so severe that all local doctors have dismissed him.
You're Bubba too.
Because it's too.
You're Bubba. And it's not a fairly.
It's not a common disorder.
Yeah. At least not that severely.
It's becoming
Yeah, maybe
more
he's
and more
just
common.
talking about himself.
Something about his that
Yeah.
like our kids generate like our kids
Something we're doing.
something. I think it's the genetic. And so because of that, it's just more diseases are becoming apparent that didn't exist before.
Or, you know, they've died.
Well, I mean, EOE is really just a hyper case of your allergies being super bad. Because it's a case of your allergies being so attacking you as opposed to attacking
I mean, also the Earth can only survive with so many people, and
What? No, you
ecosystems do what they have to do. Keep turning.
fine then.
Okay,
interesting study I want to talk to you about later with that.
so the podcast.
He's like, no, I'm talking about Bubba. I don't
You got me.
Have meat yet?
I got you?
You got me.
How did I, what do you mean I got
It's
you?
not spiced.
The part about the rock.
That's the whole podcast. Please elaborate.
No, where you said, now hang on. Don't think it's crazy. I was like,
It's already crazy.
That's that part.
Oh, I got you.
You guys
You know when you said, hey, the same rock move,
Uh-huh.
and they're like, hang on.
You believe.
Now,
Yeah.
you people think that's a crazy idea, which I automatically thought was a crazy
Oh yeah,
idea.
of course.
They like you pointed out the fire, the smoke, pardoning of the seas, the other various miracles. It was like, you know what? That's a good point. Never mind.
You believe some pretty crazy stuff about this time period, and
you don't
you're gonna
believe
dismiss
that
the
a
rock?
You don't believe the rock got up and moved from this place
Right.
to this place?
Rock rolled around.
Also, I don't know what version it was, but
You were in the wrong side of it.
yeah.
What
Pastor Reed had a verse that you used to sing to.
Yeah?
I forgot what it was.
what
He dropped the spoon into my shirt.
We want you to hold on to it for him.
Yeah. Keep this safe. Keep it close. What?
when it says rock, what size rock does it mean? Does it mean tiny rock, big rock, boulder rock?
Well, it had to be a big enough rock that enough water would come out of it to give water for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people and all their livestock.
I mean, you took a rock this size with fire hose pressure.
If you get tired of it,
You
we'll
can do it.
That's not a rock. That's a boulder.
Okay.
That's not a rock.
Yeah, it never says how big the rock is.
Boulder.
It just says it's shaking.
Shaped like a sieve.
What's sieve?
So a sieve is like it's like kind of like this, except it's got holes all in it.
Very tiny hole.
Oh,
Tiny holes.
I know.
Strainer.
And so then it would just it would plump up on its side and roll.
And it would dig into the ground and the water.
And then when it got there, yeah, it would bury itself down on the ground, and nobody could find it except for Miriam. She'd lead the elders to it, and they'd sing, and it would rise up. And
And where did this come?
Why Miriam?
Where was this annotated? I've never heard that before.
so it's one of the oral stories that are passed down from generation to generation, then refined by rabbis examining the scriptures from a viewpoint of someone who's native to the language, and reading in between the lines to make sure that the oral history sticks with what's actually presented in what's considered Torah.
Torah being the first time.
Torah being the first 5 books of the Bible, yeah. And they're so respected and so popular that even Paul had studied them and references it here in 1 Corinthians 10.
Yeah.
As he's directly referencing that midrash when he talks about the spiritual rock following them.
Don't jump off the chair. 1 second, I take my
I
head off.
never heard that.
I want to hold them, but I just want to be safe, just in case, because I was yesterday.
So then, if you actually
Meet up.
if you actually do the tracking, so this is their course through the desert. This is the land of Goshen where the slaves lived. And they came out and they came down and they came all the way over to here. That's about a 2 days journey.
That's 2 days.
That's 2 days.
How many?
It's also 2 days to go from here to here. Okay.
So how many? How big? What's the scale of this map? Like how big is this map?
Well, I mean, this is Saudi Arabia and this is Israel and this is Egypt.
Oh, okay.
So and here's the Dead Sea.
Okay.
This is the Red Sea. Okay, so it's 2 days from here to here. And this is where the cloud went from leading them to behind them to obscure their path, and the east wind separated the waters, and they crossed across. And here's pictures from there's a guy named Ron Wyatt, and in the 80s, he was gonna track down exactly where it was because there were 3 different beliefs. There was one belief that said they came down here like this, and then that Mount Sinai was here. And they came back up, and then there was another one that believed that they came down like this, and then they went across here, and Mount Sinai was here. And then the third belief was that they came across here.
But we know
And
that
so
they
he
did.
thought,
But
so
we know
he
that
thought,
they-
wherever they crossed, there should be leftovers of the Egyptian army, right?
Right.
So he went and he checked here, and there was nothing. So then he checked here, and of all of these deep spaces, this is the only spot right here where it's shallow enough that an east wind could have actually blown the water up and caused dry land. Everywhere over here and over here, it's so deep, they would have had to have climbed down into the trench and back up the other side, over here too. And when they went and dove, they actually found chariot wheels.
Yeah,
And
I
here
think
they've
I've seen
superimposed a chariot wheel over top of this structure to show you that, coral has grown onto the chariots.
that. Yeah.
But this wheel itself is gold, so nothing's grown on it.
Huh.
And so those are pictures from his excavation of that spot. And then on this side, there's actually a standing rock monument that looks like it was stacked by hand. And then, the leading archaeologists always thought Mount Sinai was here underneath this picture. But then when he found that this was where they crossed the Red Sea, he deduced that Mount Sinai must be over here. And sure enough, he found this mountain that is burned on the top of it.
Huh.
The whole top of the mountain is still burned.
Why is it burning?
Lightning.
Because of God's presence settled on the mountain in fire and lightning. And Moses went up onto the mountain to meet with God inside of that. And then about a year later, another archaeologist released papers confirming that he believed that this same spot was where Mount Sinai was. And then sure enough, Mount Horeb,
Joseph, put your hands down.
Mount Horeb that's talked about in Exodus 17 that Moses then named Meribah is actually there. That was never in question as far as where Mount Horeb was. And so that's where he first struck the rock, right there, right next to Mount Sinai. And then it takes him 40 years to get from here to here, right? 2 days from here to here, 40 years from here to here. And the second time it says where he struck the rock, that takes place right here. In the city of Kadesh. Well, right outside the city of Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. And it identifies them both in the Bible as the same rock that puts forth the waters of Meribah.
Huh.
And then the Midrash fills in the blanks of how the rock got from there to there, and then Paul confirms it.
Can I see it?
Did you post that online for anyone who's watching on the podcast?
No, I didn't post that picture online.
Shut up.
You want me to?
Sure, you can hold it up to the camera.
Can I take a picture of it when he's done?
Yeah.
I've just never heard that
So they went from here to
talked
here.
about, but I don't pay a lot of
I had never heard it either. And then, what?
So they went from here to over here.
Yeah. And then when I went back to the
They
commentaries.
serpentine, is that why they took? Or did they just like take
No,
the
they
back
actually
line
went up
off?
and then came down.
And part of it is they didn't camp.
Yeah, they had to
Periods
camp.
of time.
And you have to think, when they camped, they had to set up tents for every family. They had to set up the tent of meeting. They had to set up the tent for the sacrifices and the altar. And they had to. There's a lot of work in camping and in moving.
Not 15 people.
No, you're talking about thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people at a
Anybody else
time.
want to see it?
Depending on which part we're talking
Yeah,
about.
where we're talking about.
Depending on how many got struck dead at any given moment.
Right.
What are you chewing on that for?
And I had never heard it before either. But then when I went back to the commentaries, Matthew Henry, my favorite theologian from the 1800s, he just openly talks about it in his commentary about Miriam's well and the rock following them and all this stuff. And I'm like, how have I never heard this before? All these years, I've never... And he's just openly talking about it in his commentary like it's not even in question. Like, oh yeah, it's just part of church history. We all know this. I'm like,
It's
no,
part of
we
church history
don't.
lost for a while.
Yeah.
Because, so like, there's a lot of church history that some people are like, that's a little hard to swallow. We're just going to ignore it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
pillars of cloud and
Yeah.
fire, except we can't deny that because it's literally in the
Too
Bible.
many times.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, he just that's how you saw him. It wasn't actually a pillar. That's just how they saw him. And you're like, it
Except-
says
Maybe
Except
pillar.
there's
in
a
Exodus-
reason why they saw him like
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
It says pillar
In
and he was
Exodus,
in it. Like,
In Exodus 14, verse 19, it says the pillar of cloud came and passed through the camp and then stood behind them, and the cloud basically opened up and obscured the Egyptians' view of the Israelites, and all the Egyptians could see was darkness of cloud, and from the Israelite side, all they could see was a pillar of fire that was lighting up the whole camp as if it was daytime.
so it's kind of like, don't go this way.
Right.
Y'all just stay right there.
Yeah, you stay right where you is.
And that's actually where Paul's talking about. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. That cloud part, I was trying to track that down. That's when the pillar of cloud passes through the camp. They're baptized in Moses there, and then they pass through the Red Sea. That's the baptizing in the sea.
What's his favorite thing to say? Bub. He says mama when he wants mama or he wants to eat.
But it's so interesting that
He loves his bubba.
it seems like a pretty
It is
important
very
detail, you know, like. And also the fact that it's Miriam's well, and the rock is
Well,
Christ.
see, I've heard of
And then
Miriam's
Mary's
well.
actual name is Miriam. Mary, the mother of Jesus. Actual name, yeah, Mary the father. Miriam, her actual name is Miriam. And so she gives birth to Jesus, who is the well.
Yeah.
And then instead of speaking life into the well, they strike the well again.
Have you heard about
When did Mary die?
Water coming out of the column.
After Jesus.
Rock following him?
The rock following the Egyptians.
Maybe it was a rock lobster.
In the desert. The rock that they struck that
When
had
did
water
Mary,
coming
Mother
out
of
of it.
Jesus, die?
Yeah, the one that he hid it and he was just supposed to
11
Speak
years
to it.
after the death of her son in 41 AD.
41 AD.
41 AD.
And what year was Pentecost?
And then with
What year was Pentecost?
Miriam can find it. And he's talking about.
Are you comparing to the date that Mary died to the date of
What was
Pentecost?
the date of Pentecost
We
in
need to
Rome?
do it.
What was the date? What year?
May 31st, 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Thing, yeah. I've never heard of it.
What are you trying to do?
It makes sense.
29, 30, or 33.
I've tried too many times.
Thank you for subscribing to Game Radar. I didn't subscribe to Game Radar.
Uh-oh, we didn't find it.
Oh, that's on the crucifixion.
Because I didn't bring a blanket, but she
He's
gave me
warming
one.
me up.
Oh, okay.
I would wager, and I can't find. This site says nobody knows what year the day of Pentecost happened in.
Well, that's the problem with most of Acts and Romans.
I would
Is that
wager.
because of the Jewish calendar or whatever?
I don't know. I would wager that Mary probably died before Pentecost happened.
Do you want some?
I just want to know cheese.
Because of the connection between Miriam and Miriam's well, Miriam died and the water stopped flowing. And he struck the
Miriam,
rock and then the water
sister of
started flowing
Moses,
again.
right?
Yeah. I would wager that Miriam, the mother of Jesus, died before the day of Pentecost to fulfill the foreshadowing of between Miriam and the well.
Wouldn't that
Mary
be
and
right
Jesus.
after the crucifixion?
I don't know.
She died in 41.
It says she died in 41 AD.
But again, I mean.
But no, this says nobody knows what year the Pentecost was in.
Talking about Pentecost where the
Yeah,
tongues
where
of
they were
fire
in the
came
upper
down?
room and the
Yeah.
tongues of fire came down.
The
I thought
first.
that was right after crucifixion. Is it not?
If it was, you'd think they'd be able to narrow it down on these websites online, but
What year was the
everything
day
I'm
of
saying,
Pentecost?
nobody
in-
knows.
Because wasn't it when Jesus came
He said
back
go to the upper room,
and said and Jesus told them to go and stay there until they came, right?
Go and tarry, yeah,
To stay in the area.
yeah,
in
stay
the
near
city
that.
or whatever it
yeah.
was. So that
But
would
how
be-
long did they stay in the city?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they
1
could've
year,
been
2
there-
years, 1 week, 2 weeks,
Oh.
10 years? We don't know.
What date is Pentecost? Easter plus 40 days.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
What are they doing?
Who's doing?
Timmy said Avery went out to feed
They're
her.
out here.
Oh, so it'd be quiet.
You okay?
She was probably just doing it so that it'd be quiet for her to feed her, so she sat in the
I
car.
just think she was.
Yeah, so we were just saying, Brian, none of us had ever heard
Too
of
excited.
Miriam the rock following them through the desert.
Oh, I never heard of that either.
But when I went back to the commentaries, it was a common thing that they all knew in the 1800s when they were writing the commentaries. They all talk about it like it's common Christian knowledge. Like,
You ready to nurse again? She's talking.
but I was pointing to them on the map here. This is the location where Moses struck the rock the first time,
Yeah,
and this is where he strikes the rock the second time.
yeah.
And then here in Numbers 20, it identifies it as the rock of Meribah, which is the rock that he struck here. So we have to deal with the question of how did the rock get from here to here if it's not the same rock. Oh, yeah.
Well, if those people had a rock following them around that was giving them water in the desert, I don't know how they could grumble about anything.
Well, they also had a pillar of cloud leading them
Yeah.
during the day and a
And
pillar of
magic
fire
food.
at night.
And magic food.
And magic food that
magic
was
food.
on the ground for
Which-
them every morning.
Which is why every now and then when God went, you know what? I
Right.
just struck a group dead. I'm like,
I'm like,
you know,
yeah,
they
they're
kinda-
idiots.
Yeah,
They
I would
had
have-
that coming.
They lucky they made that. They lucky they made it that long.
And then in Numbers 20, they're complaining that the manna doesn't taste good. It doesn't taste pleasant. It's magic bread from heaven so you don't starve.
It's not supposed to taste good. It's supposed to keep you alive.
Who cares if it tastes
And
good?
let's be honest, nothing healthy tastes good.
Right.
I'm sorry, we're being loud.
It was probably just the right mix of amino acids and proteins, like some kind of future food. Like you just need to eat a pinch of this, and you won't be hungry for the rest of the day.
Was it gluten free though?
enjoy eating.
Was it gluten free though?
That's it. Really, really is how we are as humans.
Right,
can
we
eat-
really are.
We can eat
Yeah.
our daily nutrients. We just want more food.
Yeah,
I got something in my pocket.
just for pastime.
No, in my pocket.
Yeah, I'm not finding anything that says
What year Pentecost was in?
what year, specifically Acts 2,
Yeah.
which Pentecost that was.
Where are you going to the van for? You can't just go out there and sit.
I mean, they talk about Pentecost twice in Acts. But we don't know what year it happened in. We don't know how long the disciples tarried before it happened.
There's a bunch of chips over there.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're full of chips.
okay.
I mean, we know it was less than 70 years.
Connie, here you go. This one we're not using.
Yeah. We know it was less than 70 years because Paul writes Romans in AD 70,
Yeah.
and he had been serving in the church for 18 years before that. So we know it was more than whatever 70 minus 18 is. 52. 52. We know it was more than 52 years. At least, no, we know it was at least 52 years.
I was cold, so I figured.
Yeah, so
How old was Paul
froze
then?
up from you squeezing.
When he started writing Romans?
This is Jessie.
Okay.
Bunny Bill is live.
The correct pronoun is she
Bunny Bill?
and
Who's
her.
Bunny
Oh
Bill?
no, I'm gonna get fired and sued now. 'Cause I didn't use the right pronoun.
How old was Paul when he wrote Romans? Some people believe he was around 50 to 58. Some people believe it was during the winter of 57 to 58 when he was in the Greek city of Corinth.
57 to 58, not 70.
Yeah.
Well, that was put in then 40, 80-40 is
Screaming, I never
the
heard
latest
her.
Which might
for Pentecost.
She's hungry?
Which
Like around
Mary died when?
somewhere between 39 and 41.
It was done between 39 and 41.
So it could be. You could be accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot of supposition and a lot of.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around,
No, I
you know,
agree.
if it's
I'm
foreshadowing, was it an exact foreshadowing? Or
Was
was
it
it just
just
kind of a
foreshadowing?
loose,
Yeah.
you know, loosey-goosey,
Wow.
I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes it's.
timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly?
I mean, we are talking about a time period where a dude was walking through the desert and ended up in Ethiopia.
Right. Right.
And then back.
And then back
Like,
again. Like,
you know.
I'm sorry, you went where?
When I see her in person,
If I had a camera, I would have taken pictures. I'm sorry.
The
Yes.
complete side note that I just thought was great with the announcement of Diablo 4, one of the sorceress abilities is Shadow Door, where you
Oh.
just step from one shadow to another.
Not cool, guys.
I was like, ugh.
Not cool.
I mean, not even like dancing around what it's called, not even. I think that was the
Shadow Door.
Diablo 4, wasn't it? It wasn't the new stuff they're bringing to WoW, right? No, yeah, it was Diablo.
no, because you don't play WoW, remember?
Well, I still watched a lot of panels.
I mean, it is a game where you literally storm the gates of hell and blah blah blah. So, you know.
Has anyone seen? Everyone's seen the trailers
Did you say
before?
Lilith?
I have not.
Some of his food.
Seriously, Lilith?
I cried.
Crazy.
It was barely like the
Yeah,
opening
the-
thing for it.
the
and I
creator of
started
Sanctuary.
Like, crying.
His mother and
For Diablo 4.
because in Diablo 4, humans are a mix of two, right? And she was the demonic side in their lore. Which I was just like, and you gotta watch the trailer. It was one of those like so.
Can you access it through your phone?
No, data. You can come over and
Yeah,
come over sometime this week and you can watch them all. It's like you would need to be there if you wanted to watch, unless you wanted to watch the Hearthstone stuff, you would only need to be over for about 3 hours to watch everything. If you wanted to watch the Hearthstone stuff, you would need to be there about 6. There's 2 panels. I mean, Hearthstone's got a whole new expansion. Overwatch has the whole new expansion. So, I mean, it depends. All of the content's about 48 hours worth of content. 53 hours worth of content. But you wouldn't need 53 hours of content because you don't truly care about any of the,
Because I don't play WoW.
no, the finals and stuff. Like the gameplay stuff.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we're all good on Miriam's Well, right? Nobody has any more.
What are we talking about, Diablo?
No.
Miriam's
No.
well.
We're talking about Miriam's
Talk
Well.
about Mary as well.
Talking about Miriam.
While you were gone, we were. But now that you're back, talk
Flip up on its side and roll through the desert, following the Israelites. Bury itself. Miriam would lead them to it. They would sing to it. It would come up, and it would start giving water again until Miriam died.
You know, like
Oh, the rock was like, nah,
What?
it's gone.
Well,
if you don't want to talk to you, what's the stare at your foot?
Well, Dwayne Johnson
the theory, the Jewish theory about why it only responded to Miriam was that it was a spiritual reward for her diligence when she took Moses to the side of the river and put him in the basket and made sure he got to the princess.
No, look it up.
And that's why she had the connection with the water.
Man, Dwayne Johnson must have really liked this Miriam. I'm sorry.
It was Jesus, the Rock Christ, not Dwayne the Rock.
Which I didn't realize he was in that 70s show.
Dwayne the Rock was in that 70s show?
Because in the 70s was the beginning of like fake wrestling, right?
Okay.
It was when he plays the guy who's fighting 20
No,
something
in the
midgets.
70s, the wrestling was real.
Okay.
He said it was the beginning of fake wrestling.
He was fighting 20 midgets, and they called them midgets. I'm not saying midget because it's not necessarily, but yeah. And he had like the big fro, like he was wearing a big fake fro that you could touch. And I was like, he walks by the camera and I went,
You know, now that you've said it, I think I remember
and he
that.
starts speaking and I was like, that's the Rock.
Did he look more...
Well, he was younger because.
Did he say, "Can you smell what the
No.
midget squasher is cooking"?
No, but it was very much he was. I mean, he was playing a character from the 70s.
As a kid watching wrestling, it looked way different than it looks now.
Well, when you were a kid watching wrestling, there were several wrestlers that actually legitimately died.
Yeah, like, well,
So they added a
not
lot
like that,
more
but
safety.
the Von Erichs really wrestled.
Yeah.
They did a lot of show too, but then they
But
got out there
some
and
of them-
wrestled for a few minutes.
Yeah, some of them were. I mean, so like when we were kids, it
I
was a
remember
lot
when the
different than
Undertaker and
nowadays.
Mick Foley were like, "No, we're done. This is too dangerous."
Yeah.
And then when they put in safeguards, they were like, "The comeback of the Undertaker."
Yeah, because it was.
The
It was
comeback of the animal.
Like,
You're
like
like,
one dude got
whoa.
his back broken, the
Mick
one
Foley
dude
was my
died,
favorite
the
guy.
one guy, and you were just like, but this was fake.
You
If
know,
this
Mick-
is fake, how did
The
they
one
do this
overdosed
back?
on cocaine.
Well, that's
another
different.
one
You know, Mick
overdosed
Foley
on-
dyes his beard and does real good at Santa every Christmas. No. Yeah.
That makes sense.
He goes around and does
Does
gigs.
not want to look at mama.
He did dress like Santa a few times, like Mick Foley.
He has a Christmas room in his house that is decked out in Christmas all year round.
I can see that. Mick Foley was one of my favorites.
Yeah, the
He
soft-
wrote his own Santa book.
He was a
He's
soft guy,
like-
My favorite back in the day was Hulk.
He was a soft guy, right?
I've always been an Undertaker Kane
No,
guy.
wait, yes, he was the sock guy.
Roxanne, I think you're doing that wrong.
No, he's doing that wrong. She's
I'm trying to-
lactating correctly. He's the one not handling it right.
That's what he does when he's hungry. He's like, "Feed me."
Isn't that kind of how you look?
That's
when you're
funny, that's the
hungry?
same thing
Just
I
throwing that out there. Like,
So then he gets a shot.
Ah.
Oh, what's going on back there?
It's like Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry.
I'm a snake. Was he a snake?
He's threatening you now. He's like,
Oh, I'm back to this.
what are you gonna do with that? That you know that one's not yours, right? You gotta return it. Good deal.
Hey, his mama ain't here. She says mama.
You gotta return that.
She's his mama now.
I'm his mama now. His
We
mama.
don't have a car seat. It can't. We can't even take it back. Like, it's
Car
gotta
seat
go.
is in the
car.
car.
I need some soon.
That's my strategy.
Soon is not the accurate statement there.
Okay, like a year down the road.
Oh,
Yeah, he's.
I was like, that's more than 9 months. Sorry.
House.
That's a good show.
I like
It
that
is.
She
one.
wants to start doing the fostering stuff. I'm like, we need a house. She doesn't want to do it in the trailer. I'm afraid the floor's gonna collapse. I'm afraid I mean, we're at a point where it's dying. You've stepped through your porch, and ours is the same age.
Didn't you step through your?
I've stepped through the porch. I've stepped through the laundry room floor.
Laundry room's
I've
right.
stepped through the kitchen twice.
Kitchen.
Sarah was jumping the other day, just jumping through the house, and we're like, oh my gosh, she's just gonna fall through the floor.
In the girls' room by the window, I've stepped and had the carpet catch me about a foot below the actual room.
Yeah, that's what she was talking. She goes, we should
Did
get
you get
a house.
your
We should
window
give ours to Shay. So I was like, why? It's not better than
It
theirs.
is. It actually is better than that.
But not by much.
Not by much, but it's better. And it's closer.
But are you
It is
warm
closer.
enough? Mostly.
Land payment though.
We keep it down low. And
They've raised it
because,
again.
you know, save energy.
Yeah. The taxes?
But it's like
Taxes
3
and land
windows.
payment. We're at like almost
But
600
they're
a month.
giving like.
Yeah.
they
Oh
put out a
no,
paper.
yours wouldn't be.
Yeah. Oops, I'm sorry.
Mine usually would be what?
Yours wouldn't be the same cost.
Because they put out a paper for families
Under
in a certain
30,000.
size, under making like
Oh.
make under a certain amount a year.
Yeah.
You get a major discount on it, and we're like not even close.
Yeah, it's 30. That's a mass for the
I'm
discount.
not.
The biggest
It's like
discount is
25.
32.
I thought it was 25.
32,000?
Yeah, a year.
That's more than I've ever made my
I know.
whole life.
I know. I was like,
Yeah.
this would work for us.
I never paid any attention to it.
No.
They said something about him holding his head to the side. They had to do some sort of.
I'm nervous. Monday the HR lady comes back, so I should hear
Because
something
I was
beginning
like,
next
wait a
week.
minute, she does that a lot. Does she straighten
For that
that
job, hopefully. Unless I blew it.
Yeah, it's just that's her dominant side, I think. So she like.
Well, also she's
Well,
still
she's
kind of
still long
really
head.
little. Yeah.
His head was kind of long, and he had a hard time turning his head sometimes.
Well, I think that baby was older too. He was probably closer to his age.
And when they're newborn, they have a hard time holding their head because their head's still long.
And it's heavy.
Yeah.
And their neck muscles have to grow.
All those brains.
This morning, we
Well, I mean,
She does have a big old daddy head.
Well, for the
2 months
majority
old,
of the time.
and he was his longest finish. Oh my
For the
goodness.
majority of the time, they're
Oh,
not
really?
dead,
You're
so they don't, their neck
so
doesn't
cute.
grow, and then so
Babies,
the muscles aren't
and we're
developed.
like,
So
It's okay. It's okay. You look
it
like
takes
your
time.
mommy.
When you speak to people with big heads like me, you know, we actually have defined neck muscles. So the muscle in my body that you can actually see when I'm not flexing is the neck muscle, and it's like, why? Well, my head's big.
This is hard to
Like,
do.
I'm
I
a fat
have
head.
giant calves, like super muscular calves. People are like, whoa, your calves. And I'm like, yeah, look at everything you have to support.
I walk on them.
I'm kind of being pulled this way.
Do you not want that?
Just chewy.
Oh, wait. I don't want to
She was enjoying chewing on it, Daddy. What's that?
That's my fault.
My turn or your turn?
I realize these also
not
make great
feeling it
proteins because they're low in sugar.
I really do.
It smells
That's
nice.
4 carbs per.
I know, exactly.
Better slow
the
down on
honey.
those things because they're not candy.
You're not candy.
They're almost as bad as candy.
More carbs.
4 carbs per, I mean.
I had big
Well, no, I mean, candy's much worse.
Yeah.
It'd be like 20 carbs per.
Ow.
I'm doing low carb, not
Close enough.
You scrape. It's helping my head.
Pinches too.
Is he right?
Bite, pinch, scratch, scrape.
I try to come and then I never heard of
Are you saying
forgive me on
things that
Facebook.
children have done to you? This one. No. She's saying you scraped him. I was like, hey, did those stuff too.
Poor baby. Was it Adeline that was always pinching?
Adeline would scratch my chest the entire time she nursed. I would have welts.
So I was hoping John would be here. John would be here. Because in the same area here in Exodus 14, last week he had the issue with, it keeps calling it the angel of the Lord and then saying, when it's saying it's God, but it's calling it the angel of the Lord back and forth. He does the same thing in Exodus 14 talking about the pillar of cloud and fire. It
Really?
says God is in the pillar of fire, but then also calls it the angel of the Lord. Interchangeably back and forth. In Exodus 14.
That isn't confusing at all.
She is just not feeling it tonight.
The burning bush too. The burning bush. It says God is in the angel of the Lord is in the bush, and then God speaks from the bush. Thought it was the angel of the Lord in the bush.
Carries the voice of God.
Well, that's the Catholic belief. They call it the Metatron, the voice of
Megatron?
God, and they
Meta.
believe that the Metatron was the angel of the Lord that speaks for God in the Old Testament.
The Metatron, also known as.
Megatron?
Alan didn't know.
That's exactly what I said.
I said that ain't trouble.
Metatron.
Alan.
Snape.
Holy
Alan.
Snape.
Severus? Huh?
Snape.
Rickman.
Alan Rickman.
Rickman.
AKA Alan Rickman. Yeah, so they explain that away as being the Metatron.
You said Snape, and I pictured Whistler.
What is the what did they say?
So the Catholic Church teaches that the Metatron is the angel that speaks for God. That God never actually talks to
Or the
mankind.
archangels?
No, he's not quite an arc.
He's just a
It's
carrier
just
of voice.
an angel. It's his whole job is speak.
He's the only angel that God can speak to. Only being that can directly hear God's voice without exploding,
Well, what about Jesus?
according to the Catholics.
What
What
about
about
the first couple
Jesus?
atoms of that?
That's what they say in that movie.
Well, I mean, what about Jesus though?
No, it's different. God
Dogma.
the Father.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I guess God the Son is.
Or according to Dogma, God the Mother.
Alanis Morissette. Meaning, so like,
I thought that was awesome.
it was. Jesus was a God in human form.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
So because of that, it's different. Because he was wrapped in a human shell. God isn't. And so there's a thought process. The Catholics hold the thought process that he cannot speak. So anytime it says God spoke, it's actually
The Metatron.
The
the
Metatron.
Metatron.
Or whenever
Yeah.
it says the angel of the Lord, the Catholics teach, oh, that's the Metatron.
Now, again, that's a belief that is not 100%.
Why are they saying that God can't speak?
So it's kind of like that aspect of
True glory.
they believe that if God was to actually speak,
the earth would explode or something?
You would.
You would explode.
You would explode.
We're here.
For an example, when Moses, when he goes, I want to look at you. And he goes, for you to look at me,
Bye,
you would
Okay,
explode.
bye.
It's that same thought. That's
Well,
where they develop. I know.
You die.
I know. That's where they develop that thought process. Now, it's not one I agree with personally, because God speaks.
And according to the Catholic Church, anything they decide is reality is reality.
Yeah.
But you said
Make sure.
that Metatron is the only person that can hear God and can only speak through God.
That's their
Right.
belief.
That's their belief.
What about Jesus? What about
That's a different. And you got to think Trinity. We're talking God.
That is
like
God.
the Father.
But you would think if that was the case, because Jesus was in a human body, that his human body wouldn't be able to speak directly to God.
There's a reason why a lot of us don't agree with that belief system. It has a lot of holes in it. Yeah.
I'm glad you so easily found such blatant
So like,
holes.
the thought of that God can't speak or you would explode, it has so many holes in it.
Right. Plus, when Jesus was baptized, it said that people heard, but they heard it as
The
thunder.
Catholics would teach that's an angel speaking on behalf of God.
Oh, okay.
That's what their belief is. I personally, and lots of people agree with me, and lots of people agree with them. I don't agree with that. I think when God speaks, it's God speaking.
Yeah.
I don't agree with a lot of what the Catholic Church
About 86%.
endorses. I would say it's about 93%,
What was 86?
according to John Bevere.
Sorry, I thought it was 86. I thought John Bevere was 86%.
93% man-made up, 7% God-inspired.
Is what John Bevere was talking.
He just did it with his eyes again. He's like,
They've all checked out. We're the only ones still.
It's often like that.
maybe it's a new trick.
I think that's what it is. Because when I smile at him, he smiles at
We
me.
should need to do that other podcast.
He smiles again. So I think it's a new thing
I
he's
do
trying
another
out.
podcast. I did build my games. I got harassed today on one of my Discord servers because my game is not. I plugged my friend's game that's in the second iteration, and he turned it right around on me and was like, "Yeah, everyone on this channel should also, harass News until he actually puts his out." So I've got to, Plus, I just like playing games. It's frustrating.
I don't
Like, it's the thing I love to do.
There's something
And,
like that all day.
like, I'm picking up the scriptures and it's just, they're speaking to me to such a degree.
People will always put a pull on your anointing,
Finnick was like that a lot. I bet
and
he-
when you start to pursue your anointing, the pulls start to pull in opposite directions sometimes.
It's fun, right?
It always gets harder when you start to pursue your anointing. So you have to weed out what is pressure in the wrong direction from what is pressure in the right direction, and pursue the right direction and beat the living out of the people that are pulling in the wrong direction.
affected by caffeine.
So you have an outlet for the fury.
The bad thing is there's certain aspects of that, of building the game, building the Discord,
See, that was the
building
thing. She was
Twitch
perfectly
stream,
happy
building
until she spit up.
that is
And it's part of
also,
the anointing, yeah.
and so that's
I
what's
get it.
frustrating. So, okay, how much do I put here and how much do I put here?
Right.
And that's what I'm struggling with right now is where's that balance?
Oh, they're out
And
there.
I'm
I
leaving
don't
it
know
up to
where
her a
Ryan
lot.
is. Just out there at the bar.
Oh.
And she's being very quiet about it and pretending like I didn't, like I'm not actually giving it to her.
Did you
Because
show
I
that
haven't
to Brian?
I told her that, but that's really what I've been doing recently. If she says it, then I do it. But we're not going to tell her that's the rule, or she's going to. Can I please?
Oh, on the back.
I'm sorry. We're not talking about you
Mine was-
either.
Oh, well, yeah, because that's the line.
Tell when I walked up,
Here, hold this.
she took the baby outside.
Hey, sir, just reach out to me when you want to come over this week.
Yeah.
Like I said, we have it for I think it's a month.
He's gonna come spend the night Tuesday night and Wednesday night and just stay for 48 hours straight.
No.
We're making
Were you
two.
talking about me?
We're making two very large meals for both of those nights, and we've got a ton of crap at home right now. So to answer your question, we're not taking anything home.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I knew you were gonna
Get all
ask,
of your
but
stuff? Oh, here, this is your blanket.
I've got
Yeah,
rotel
we'll
dip.
get some home.
Where's the
I've
gray
got
blanket?
rotel dip I gotta eat.
The what?
The gray blanket?
I made gravy burgers
think
for lunch. I'm making stew for dinner tomorrow.
I haven't seen a gray blanket.
He brought in a gray blanket, but I don't know where it went.
So, Billy, what's the podcast about that just came out?
Oh,
Oh, that's their.
the podcast that just came out
No, is this Asher?
That's hers.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Asher.
is Jesus in the Old Testament Part 3.
Okay.
Need this?
No, I was just, they're leaving, I didn't have to leave.
You need to ask your mom.
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek? Okay, makes sense. So I read a very interesting thing.
Is the son of.
No, I'm not. I'm finishing.
The son of nobody.
Nobody. He shows up.
Without father, mother, or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life,
The guy that showed up.
but resembling the Son of God, he remains a priest forever.
So, read an interesting study about some
Oh, the
genealogists.
study.
Read an interesting study about some genealogists. And
Or you know what?
they were a
Where's
couple
your
of
graph is in
Christian,
backpack.
well,
One right there.
Yeah.
known Christians, but religious
Get me Mr.
genealogists
Giraffe out of his
that
backpack.
We're out of the backpack. Which
we're taking numbers that are used by genealogists to say, okay, the human race, to come from evolutionary standpoint, the human race had to come from approximately, I think it's like
what is Mr. Giraffe?
1340 something, just over 1,000 is where genetically you can trace all the genetics. And here's the math of July and da-da-da-da. They took that and they said, okay, let's tune it on a bigger computer, not the old computer that was used in the 70s.
I just realized he
Let's
looks
tune it on a
like,
bigger computer,
I don't
and
know.
let's see if we can take it all the way back to 2 people.
He looks so much like Adam.
And they ran 2 different tests. One with the genetic makeup of the 2 people
Well, right now,
treated
like,
similar,
his skull looks
and
like
one
Adam.
with the genetic makeup of people being different. Meaning they were created with a different genetic code. And then they planned for a wipeout and then a genetic of.
Great.
What are you talking about?
8.
It may be
Oh,
different.
encouragement.
8. And then they were like, yep, no, it's possible. But they, even with the way the numbers were crunched, it would change the numbers slightly for what we know it should be. But again, that's just parts of an algorithm that they have. They're assuming the genetics of today or the genetics of back then, as opposed to thinking about genetic pairs differently for the people that were first created. You know, things like that. Not taking those types of steps, doing it from just a numeric standpoint, and it is possible, but it would take a little longer than what is scripturally
What happened?
because of not taking that information. Show our genetic study that was done.
I'd like to learn about.
Just to look at.
I think so.
Her back, she's on her back, or I would call her out.
I think it's $4.99 for kids and $6.99 for adults for the taco night. $6.99 for the taco. $6.99 for nachos. $7.99 for taco night for adults.
Okay, alright. I've heard her tell them to be quiet several times, and they're not being quiet.
So it was an interesting study I read about. And then the other study I'll tell you about when we turn off the live stream that I read about.
Oh.
But it's not appropriate for it. I don't know if we're ready to do that.
Well, it's on.
It's not done, it's just giving a warning.
It was on low battery.
Yeah, a little battery.
It still does in the background until it dies.
Alright, so interesting stuff about Miriam's well and Exodus. And next week we have to talk about Melchizedek.
Which is a very interesting person.
Yeah.
I'm done with it.
Sorry.
All right. Have a good week. Go listen to the podcast. Look up the stuff, and then come join us here next week, or come join us here next week at El Chico in Richland Hills in North Texas. And until next time.